Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Goffstown Planning Board meeting. This is our regular scheduled meeting for this evening. We'll begin with our introductions as normal. We'll start with Dave.
Dave Pierce, alternate.
Jim Redmond.
Barbara Griffin.
Scott Ozana, Town Engineer.
Kimberly Peace.
Tim Redmond.
Gayla Brook, alternate and recording secretary.
Philip Levanza.
Collis Adams, Select Board Representative.
Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director.
David, you'll be voting on all matters this evening, please. I don't see anything under action items. Joanne, do we have minutes to approve?
Patty left a set of minutes from the last meeting in front of you, but if you'd rather wait and approve them at the next meeting, that's fine. She just thought you might want to have them when we go over the zoning.
I think we're going to need
articles.
to do October 27th also, so check the records for the next meeting and put specifically what
October
minute.
27th.
We
Yeah.
did not do that last.
Oh, I don't think you did either because
Right.
we had a workshop and we didn't
Right.
do it that night.
So there will be 2 sets of minutes.
Okay.
So are we going to move them out or keep them for tonight's agenda?
It's up to you, but I know you haven't had a chance to read them.
So we can at least do the 27th minutes, if nothing else, because they were distributed prior to the meeting. So let's have a discussion on the minutes of October 27th.
Motion to approve the minutes of October 27th. I'll have one correction in the appropriate sentence.
Second.
On page 10 of 23 pages, Kimberly Pierce made a comment, and I'll yield that it was Kimberly Peace.
We're close, but we're not that close.
I don't know, it's happening more and more, and we're going to start to talk.
We already are, apparently. So there's one correction to the minutes from Dave. Anybody else have any corrections for the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Do we have a second?
Barbara.
Oh,
So the minutes for our zoning workshop from the 10th, I think, give everybody a chance to read them. And if someone wants to refer to them for our meeting tonight for anything or reason, we'll defer them until our next scheduled meeting. Joanne, you have anything we have to do prior to the new business application?
No, I think we can go right into new business, and then after that, we could cover the finalization of the warrant articles.
Okay, we have a letter in the record this evening.
If you'd rather do that now instead of waiting until the end, that's fine. We have a letter from Mike Hillhouse regarding the medical facility project on Mast Road,
Well,
and he has concerns.
we generally handle these under action items, so why don't we handle it? Could you start
Okay.
with explaining to the members what this is about?
The contractor had started the work quite a while ago, and they never called for any inspections, which kind of started the project off on the wrong foot. And then Scott Ozana has been out there several times trying to get them to do what is correct, and they apparently don't understand English, so
So,
Are you speaking literally or figuratively?
I'm speaking figuratively.
so when you're done, we'll ask Scott to speak after you get done with your explanation.
So, as of today, well, let me back up a minute. So Mike Hillhouse sent this letter about a week ago. No, more than a week ago, about a week and a half ago. And I was planning to put it on last week's agenda. But then I spoke with Scott and we spoke with the contractor and we said, okay, if you can, finalize everything and get it to the point where it's correct, we won't need to bring it to the planning board. So I'll give you a week because we have a planning board meeting next week. And because last week was a workshop meeting, I didn't really think it was proper to bring that up. So the week went by and not too much happened. Scott's been out there several times just in the past week. He can bring you up to date on what's happening on the site. I spoke today with the vice president of real estate for the company that owns the building. And they're aware of what's happening. They're up to date on what's transpired. But there's also an additional problem with flooding now in the street right in front of the driveway. So they're claiming that that's not their issue. So it's turning into something not so great. So Mike Hillhouse is complaining about his property, that there's some things going on. Scott has found additional things, and now the flooding in the street.
So the big question I'll ask you, do you know if they've received a certificate of occupancy at this point for the,
Well, they wouldn't,
Well, they haven't, because it's just the work was being
Right.
done in the exterior, the parking lot area and the drainage, so.
but aren't those conditions of approval with all those changes tied to their use of the building?
Not to the use of the building, no. It's just an approval for the parking lot renovations that they were doing. So they're already occupying the building before the project started.
Scott?
Yeah, so throughout the summer, I think they got a late start. I was not at the pre-con. Eric covered the pre-con for me, Eric Gustafson in the engineering office. But it was explained to the contractor that they needed to contact us after erosion control measures were put in place, and then after or during drainage installation. And we've never been contacted by the construction company since it started. So it kind of got out of hand. I mean, mid-September, I think I was out there on September 14th, and binder was already down. There was a dumpster placed on top of the leaching catch basin in the rear that was supposed to be collecting water before going onto the Hillhouse property. So I couldn't even really inspect that. The other portion of the drainage seems like it was installed correctly, which is an infiltration system over on the other side of the parking lot.
When you say seams, did you inspect it or are you get?
I didn't see it go in the ground, so I don't know.
Do we have inspection requirements?
There was one in the notice of decision that it was supposed to.
So they're in violation of the notice of
Yeah,
decision
they were
already?
supposed to contact us during construction when they were at specific milestones.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you.
So we don't know if the proper stone was put around the infiltration system that's there. And then early October, or I think it was early October, Mike reached out to Joanne with a complaint, and she said, this is something that engineering can help you with. So I met with the Hillhouses. They brought up the concern that the dumpster was now moved, and they had put a 4-inch frame on top of the catch basin, and it was off the pavement. And this 4-inch frame was clearly higher than all the pavement around it. I don't know if
Is
did
this-
that picture.
is that-
So this is what they've done since. So that was our first concern. Is that there's no way water was going to get into the thing, because first of all it's higher than the pavement, and then the pavement never actually went around the structure itself. So
was that it?
no, I had sent a picture.
Yeah,
don't
I
think
didn't
it made it
include
in this
those
package,
for
'cause
tonight.
they fixed that.
Because
I'm just
it's not.
explaining
Oh,
what
but, yeah, okay.
was the early thing.
All right.
So I sent an email saying, there's issues with this catch basin. It won't collect water the way it's constructed. We needed, something needs to be done. The invert of the structure needs to be lowered below the pavement elevation so water will actually flow to it. Mike Hillhouse also brought to the attention that there was an existing infiltration catch basin in the back corner off of the pavement that should be cleaned out. So we asked them to do that. They actually did clean that out, and they've offered to do some grading between the two properties to stop water from flowing off of the medical building site, and it'll kind of pool around that other infiltration catch basin. They've yet to tell us when they plan to do that. We could be buried in snow any day now, so they're running out of time. But then my issue with this new fix that they have is this cover, which I included the spec sheet that I could find online for. I asked for one because it doesn't appear to be load rated to me for vehicles to drive on. And they've now paved around it. They paved around it today without any approval from us because that's not the grate that was on the approved plans. They had a standard frame and grate, and they didn't ask if this new one was acceptable, and I kind of explained in an email on Monday that it doesn't appear to be. It wasn't bolted down either. They bolted it down today.
Are they responding to you about this stuff, or are you just firing off emails?
Until today, I was getting random responses. It took a email last week from Joanne that was kind of threatening about, this is going to take board action to finally get a response from anyone. And I was emailing the two engineers from Keach, Nordstrom, and a gentleman named Chris Nickerson, who I believe is the property manager who was managing the construction project.
He is, and he's
Yeah.
in charge of the project, according to the man that I spoke with today.
Yeah, so no one was responding to me until Joanne said something, and my emails were asking them to meet me on site. No one ever has said, all right, let's meet on site. They just do these solutions that they think are gonna work without proper approvals or any type of consultation with engineering or the Hill Houses. They're just kind of saying, hey, this'll work, and I'm getting frustrated, so.
Well, it seems to me that I had this exact discussion with the engineer of record about that drain and whether he modeled it to what storms he modeled it to and whether it was going to actually work,
Yeah,
which he assured us it would.
well, so what it was modeled for was to take a large portion of, so basically the back water. The stuff
Okay.
on the side wasn't directed to it, but, so the way it's graded, the water should get there. The grate is, in my opinion, not the proper grate. They had emailed me back this afternoon after I mentioned I was bringing it up at the planning board, that they're gonna get me the cut sheet and that it's H20 load rated, but I mean, it's right here, it says something about pedestrians, but I don't see anything about
What, the pond skimmer plate?
it's a pond skimmer plate. It can't be rated for vehicular traffic.
No.
They're on top of structures that you're usually surrounded by
Put out in the
water.
detention pond.
Yeah, so I don't have confidence in that.
Look at the wedge anchor.
Yeah, I highlighted the anchor that, because it wasn't anchored at the time and someone could have slipped and fell into it. So the fact that it's anchored now, at least it's safe until we come up with the solution.
Well, the fact that they haven't had any inspections is a big red flag for me.
Yeah.
Barbara, did you want to speak?
In the depths of my memory, I recall that when this building went in with Dan DeGrenier, there was much discussion about the location and the abutting sites, and that they needed to make sure that nothing was affecting abutting sites. And my guess is, if we pull the notice of decision that does generate a certificate of occupancy, we're going to find a condition that says we have the right to haul you back in if there are any health or safety issues at a minimum. So
Other members?
I'm just putting that out there. I want you two
I'm
to have your
about-
discussion
I'm
about
I'm-
inspections, but
I don't know if I'm allowed to make a motion as the chair, but I'm about ready to make a motion to revoke their site plan, begin the process to
So are
revoke
they
their
in
site plan.
compliance with an approved site plan or not? Sounds like they are not. So we do have,
If you want to do that, and I
We
think
got to
that's
know
what it's leading to, you gotta state all the reasons. So don't
There's a
think
We
whole
have,
about it.
we've already stated several.
No,
They-
well, you have to state all the reasons, listen to me. So don't make the motion until we've created that list.
Record.
Because you're bound by that list
Okay.
once you give notice. So this is something we ought to spend a little time thinking about. So
Thank
don't
you.
make your motion yet, please.
Can I finish I want to talk.
I'm sorry,
about
Scott, I didn't
the-
interrupt you. I'm just
That's okay.
a
There's
little annoyed.
the flooding issue in the front. So in the pictures, you'll see, this is at the western entrance. So the puddle, yes, these pictures were taken yesterday. The puddle was extending out into the traveled way, that means beyond the white line, substantially, and this puddle is a few inches deep, and it extended all the way up the shoulder to the other entrance, or the exit. I sent these pictures to them and explained this was an issue that needed to be resolved, and their response to me and Joanne, I think they included Joanne, was that this was a pre-existing issue that they did not create. You can see on the two pictures where you kind of see the grass, so the one where you're facing, so this one right here, you can see this is that new berm that they put in to stop the water from going onto Brad Parkhurst's property. That seems to be what's really holding the water back. So it's clear that there may have been a puddle there. There very likely was a puddle there when you look at the grading, but from everyone that I talked to in engineering and at DPW, it was never this bad. It didn't go out into the road.
Was it going into Brad's property prior to this? Is that why we're...
It likely was, yes, and DPW installed a catch basin on his property at one point because of that issue. I think the intent of the berm was more to stop the medical building's water from, excess water from entering Brad's site.
Do you need the plan?
Can I see that plan? Because I think we required at their site approval that they put a Cape Cod berm, asphalt berm down that.
I think they went with an earthen berm along with
Cape Cod berms and earthen berms are two different things, and you know that, and I know that.
too, yeah, I don't
So
think there's a
if we
Cape Cod
specifically
berm.
stated a Cape Cod berm and it's not on the plan, it's on the plan and it's not on the job, then they're in violation of the
I
site.
don't believe it's on.
Is this the berm between them and Brad's house? or-
Yeah,
He spoke to me about this at
I think it'd
voting.
be your next page, that's their demo sheet. I think that's the site plan.
If it didn't get if it didn't make it to the plan, then it's my fault for not making sure it got to.
So what they did, they have a graded berm there.
I see it in the
Yeah.
picture. Yeah.
So it wasn't,
Can we go to can we go back to the record, to the tape, the minutes?
Yeah, and then it gives us a chance.
Somebody want to speak?
I had a question. So did the site plan approval have a condition that they submit a stamped as-built plan?
I don't know if it requires it to be stamped, but they do have an as-built. I believe that's normally one of our
Conditions of approval.
conditions, yeah. So,
Why would we have an as-built that's not stamped?
They're always stamped.
Oh, they're always
Yeah,
stamped.
It's
Okay.
required.
okay.
That's all.
I just don't know if that's in the wording of the condition.
Well, we should have it be a standard condition and get the wording correct. And just
Okay.
put it on every print from now on.
I agree. Should be a standard
The meeting
condition.
date, I can do that.
The next meeting is December
I don't
15th.
know when the
Oh.
prior meeting
For
was.
that approval.
I don't recall either. When it was.
I think the meeting was
Oh, I
June
might have
9th.
noticed the decision.
June
Well, we
9th.
have 6/23/22 revision per conditions of approval on the revisions note on the sheet here, so.
So
something
June
around
19th sounds right.
6/23 might have been,
June 9th, I think that's when it
So
is.
a June meeting sounds
Yeah.
right.
I have my staff report here with suggested conditions, but not the notice of approval. Site inspection by town or town's representative will be required for general plan conformance, erosion control and drainage.
Something else?
mhm.
Well, we don't have the actual notice of approval of the minutes, so to see what was adopted, right?
David?
I feel that we're beginning to engineer this thing and we don't have all the facts. And if we're gonna have to state specific reasons that there are faults in the construction, we need to have a clear statements. and what those
Absolutely.
are. And I'm not sure we can work those in this environment right now. I think the staff should bring those to us.
All right.
I agree.
Well,
So I'd like to put this on for, is our next meeting December 15th?
Yeah, December
13th.
8th, we have the hearing for the zoning articles.
So December 15th
And
is,
then the regular meeting is the
Well,
15th. But you could
that's
do
how-
it on the
that's
we
how-
could put this on the 8th.
Yeah, it's a public meeting, so, yeah.
I would like to move this to the 8th with a, so it's noticed, so they can show up. I would like to see what the conditions of approval for the for that original site plan is, because that we can deal with the occupancy of the building. Because this just deals with, the site plan is the amendment, not occupation of the building. And if we could, just for the record, Scott, Mike Hillhouse has sent us an email. Can we just, I understand that he's got some points on this, and just so I understand, I want to know what's been resolved and what has not been. The catch basin is installed higher than the asphalt. That's clearly not resolved, correct?
With the improper grate that they put on it, water will now flow to it. But I don't agree with the solution. I don't think it's the appropriate.
All right, so they've solved the water flow system that Mike is referencing in his email, but they've solved it in a way that you don't approve of. Okay.
Correct.
And there's a notation that nothing is directing the flow of runoff toward the catch basin?
So I went out and visually watched the flow of water yesterday, and the majority of the rear parking lot does drain towards the structure. I actually spoke with Mike yesterday and explained what I saw. I also explained to him that there's a driveway that actually goes back around to the front of the building that
Right.
is still directed towards his property. I don't think it was ever intended to go towards that basin. So I think he understands that. The Hill Houses are here tonight if we want to hear from them.
No, I saw that they were here, which is why I wanted to go through their email specifically. So there's an issue with drainage, but you're not sure it's this issue. The issue is that extended driveway behind the building is now possibly flowing.
Yeah, I think that the applicant has offered a solution to that may solve the problem, but they have not really expressed when that will be done. So
Okay.
that's my issue there.
Okay, when's the when?
Yeah.
And then the existing drainage structure has been cleaned out?
It
Okay.
has been, yes.
Okay. And is the dumpster is no longer on top of the new structure, obviously?
Dumpster's been moved, correct.
Do you know whether the dumpster is where it was designated to be on the site plan or
It
not?
is, but it hasn't, the enclosure's not been built yet.
Okay.
Which I've noticed them about that probably like a month ago. At this point, I think it's probably about a month ago.
no, they have a whole bunch of problems.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Procedurally, we're not having a revocation hearing on the 8th. We're just having the staff come back with the list of horribles that we would put in our notice of revocation, correct?
I think that's what we're,
Because you have to do a 30-day notice of the revocation hearing, so.
but we
we're
have to
not-
get our list together. first.
Correct, so it's
That would
not,
be the goal for the 8th.
so it's not a noticed hearing, it's a discussion by this planning board.
And we could move the notice hearing to the next meeting if we have.
Well, no, you give a note, either give notice of hearing, or you give notice of revocation and they can request a hearing, but it's a 30-day notice. But we need to come up with our reasons for revocation
Okay.
first, so I think that's the purpose of the meeting on the 8th. Is there a bond or any kind of security help for this?
There's not.
Another thing to put on the list. And Gail just showed me the conditions of approval from the meeting and then certified as-built is required.
Yeah,
It doesn't
but-
say certified.
Yeah. But I think that's in our definition, isn't it? I mean, they incorporate our regs, so like Joanne, to look at the regs, does that mean signed by a stamp? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it does.
Okay. Well,
We don't have to repeat everything that's in our regs, that's incorporated into our approval.
I just want the Hill House family to know that your letter has been put into the record. We are pursuing this as a board, and we will be having a discussion on the 8th, if you'd like to attend, about our reasons for why we would feel that a revocation hearing would be required if all the reasons stack up. And we are going to and the board votes to do that. Barbara?
Would it be appropriate to ask Joanne to send the project manager for this an email indicating that we had a meeting tonight and the issues were brought to the board's attention and they began but have continued a discussion on revocation conditions of revocation for the 8th, so that they're sort of on notice? And maybe that will generate some action.
Jim?
It always does.
That's a good idea. My question for Scott is, the fact that they didn't notify us so that you could inspect the improvements is a material fault, because we can't verify what's there, and based on their performance today, we have no
Unless they
reason
took
to.
pictures, that would be their only
Okay.
saving grace. if
So
they
one of the
took
things we
pictures
should
during
ponder is,
construction.
if they did not, what's the proper remedy?
And generally speaking, you only are allowed to take pictures for inspection purposes with the permission of the inspector.
Yeah.
Well, why
I
don't,
think
Joanne, why
Eric
don't you
may have
ask that the,
actually
Well, you
told them.
need to find that out.
there are any
Okay.
pictures of the
Before we go.
structure?
And I also wouldn't want to rely on pictures too much when we're talking about drainage issues, because we're talking about tenths of a foot here that can make a big difference.
And how much stone is around the pipe, and how much
That's,
stone is
that's my
under the
biggest
pipe?
concern, is how much stone
Yeah.
actually got put around that infiltration pipe.
And it seems to me that if the water was directed to Mr. Parkhurst's property prior to this, and the solution was to put a berm up, I think we should go back to the record too, because it seems to me the engineer made some statement to the effect that the water was not going to have an adverse effect,
I
even
assume-
onto the Hill House property.
Yeah, I assumed that the berm would stop it from going onto Mr. Parkhurst's property, but would in turn direct it to a drainage structure, not just
It's
retain
directing it out into the street
in a
right now.
puddle. So-
Okay, we have, Phil?
Scott, the pond skimmer plate
Yes.
that we've got the spec sheet on here,
Mhm.
is that plate any place that can be driven over by a vehicle?
Yes, that's why it's
Yeah,
a
that's the
concern to
issue.
me. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because on here, I mean, I went through this thing 3 times, and there's nothing in here that gives a weight capacity or
Exactly,
anything on it?
yeah, and that was the first two, as soon as I saw it, I emailed them and said, hey, first of all, this doesn't look load rated, it's not attached down, someone could drive over it, the tire spin would slip it off, and then some kid could fall down it, and it also, those are 3-inch by 3-inch holes, like a small child's foot could fit down
Sure.
them. It's,
But then today, they told you they were going to send you,
yeah, today they said they would send the spec sheet that says it's load rated for.
No, I think
This,
it,
but is this the?
But I
This is the
found that
product?
myself online, because I saw the structure, or I saw the make and the model, so
Oh,
I
this
just
is not
looked it
what
up.
they sent you.
That is not what they sent me. I
Okay.
asked for it Monday, and I haven't heard anything.
So
I-
you don't know
I
for
looked it
sure
up
if this
myself.
is what the actual,
That is absolutely, so it's Hala is the company that makes it,
Right.
it says it right on it, and that is the exact model, the 30S.
okay, because.
24-30S, I
Right.
think is what it is.
The
yeah.
concern is what's highlighted in the yellow. It works well with some
Yeah,
pedestrian
exactly.
traffic.
That's why I highlighted that piece, was because
Right.
that's the only thing it said about anything associated with whether it's vehicular traffic or foot traffic, that's the only thing it said.
Right, well, it doesn't say anything about vehicles. It just
Exactly,
says
and that's-
limited,
Yeah.
where some pedestrian traffic,
Yeah.
and what is some
It's
mean?
only about that thick.
well, this is not
It's
something, this
easily
is not
picked up.
something they submitted for evidence, so I don't
Right.
think we really should have
No,
a big
I-
discussion
but
on it
now
right
they've paved around it.
Yeah, they paved around it and bolted it down today.
They can pull a pavement up, that's easy.
Exactly, and they can bolt it.
So, at this point, with the board's permission, I'd like to move this to the December 8th meeting and put this discussion off for now, so we can move on to other items on the agenda. Good. Okay,
And this is only going to be a discussion with the board, so we're not notifying anyone,
correct.
except for the manager.
if their representative from this company wants to attend it, we'd be happy to have them, but we're still having the discussion.
Okay.
All right, we'll move on to new business. Map 5, Lot 98, governmental land use review. And Joanne, could you just briefly describe what this is about? I think we already know, but I'll let you do your thing.
Yes, the applicant is here for a review of a project that they have proposed for the high school field. They're planning to replace the natural turf that is currently there with a, what would you call it?
Synthetic.
Synthetic turf. And they're adding some light poles to light up the field at night. The games are played during the weekends. And they had submitted a drainage, we had asked them to submit a drainage report. They're here under the governmental use, so this is not the same as a regular hearing. The board does not take a vote, but they do provide suggestions, comments, they can ask questions. But we did ask for a little bit more information, so they have provided a lighting plan, and they have also provided a drainage report, which Scott has reviewed and is happy with, I think.
Mr. Chair, before I get into, I'm the school district moderator, but since we're
I don't think you need to
providing,
recuse yourself.
I'm not gonna, I'm just providing comment.
You're not going to make us go to the field for a meeting, are you?
I'm gonna make you attend all the school meetings that I moderate from now on. instead.
So Jim is not going to recuse himself, and he is going to participate in this discussion. So does any board member have question for Joanne before we invite the applicants up? I call them the applicants, it's loosely stated. Okay, at this time we'll ask the schools and their representatives up.
Joanne, how much does the plan, maybe ask them, you send us a plan, and then you put a different, revised one in front of us.
That's the most recent.
Is it materially changed from the little ones that we?
They
Is
just-
this where the
they-
lighting plan is?
They changed some things on the drainage, and the lighting plan is included in that one as well. The other one didn't have it. Well, it had it, but it was a different version.
Okay.
So you have to look at the big plan, Jim, not your little one.
Okay.
And could you identify yourself for the record, please, gentlemen?
Sure, my name is Scott Gross. I'm the business administrator for the Goffstown School District. And
I'm Chris Hulk. I'm the Director of Design and Construction for Field Turf.
Did you get his last name?
No.
Hulk, H-U-L-K.
We do have 11 by 17s if it's easier for you to look at.
They are.
They are.
David and I probably.
So, I'll let you guys begin with whatever you want to talk about.
Sure, I'm going to start off, so thank you, Mr. Chair, and the Planning Board for having the Goffstown School District present these plans. In the audience, we have Alan Grady, who is from Musco Lighting, so if there are any questions with respect to the lighting plans, Alan would be here as for some assistance. We also have a school board member, Retta Chaffee, and we also have a committee of folks who's been working on this project for months now, and they're here in case there are any questions that you may have. The project before you, as Joanne said, is to replace the natural grass with an artificial synthetic material, and to put up a light post so that we could utilize that field for more opportunities. As you know, we don't have that many fields in our Goffstown School District. One of the challenges that we've had for many, many years is we have had to have practices at other locations. It is our primary game field, and we try to keep that as such, so we don't practice on that field. And therefore, we have to go to Barnard Park, we have to go to Lions Club. Now we have some new fields that are near the transfer station, but field space is at a premium. And when we have inclement weather, whether it be rain, darkness is an issue, especially during the fall, say soccer season. So this is going to be a tremendous improvement for not only Goffstown High School, but our whole entire Goffstown community. We do not allow a lot of groups to use our game field because we're trying to preserve it. Rick Wilhelmi is our Parks and Rec Director. He's also here, as well as our Athletic Director, Justin Huff. And they can tell you that we've had to move a lot of our games due to bad weather conditions to other high schools. So this project is going to really enhance the opportunities for our community, and I say students, but obviously fields like this can be used by adults as well. So, you know, with that, in terms of, kind of a great scenario. Part of the funding for this is we received a $500,000 private donation, anonymous donation. And with that, we're using federal grant money and some impact fees to kind of to fund this project. And lastly, you know, we're here because, you know, we want, you know, obviously the approval or the recommendations of the planning board, knowing that it is a governmental use, but the school district has always, whenever we do a project, gone before the planning board for your comments. And I appreciate all the help from the planning department as well as the DPW. They've been very good in terms of giving us guidance. Lastly, I want to let you know that the school district, in working with Field Turf, we wanted to make it clear that we wanted to use local contractors, so I am pleased that they are going to be using, I think, 2 local contractors in this project. And that's really about it. I don't know the technical aspects of this, that's why Chris and Alan are here, but we are very appreciative of the donor and the support of the community. We did hold a voluntary meeting for neighbors last week. We did have one neighbor stop by and voice some concerns about drainage, and that neighbor was on Wallace Road. We did provide them with a copy of, not this last plan, but the plan before that. I did give them the newest, you know, plan that I had. But we want to be good neighbors. We want to make sure we do this right. That's it.
So once again, I'm Chris Holcomb, Director of Design and Construction for Field Turf. So when Scott started talking to us about this project, same issues that most schools have. You know, you're limited on the amount of fields that you have. You're limited on the amount of playability you have on the fields. And then, you know, how do you maximize the space that you have versus the needs to really keep kids on campus so that the trainer can be there and they can, you know, be properly kind of supervised in an area that's really set up to have the athletics. You know, they have the parking there, everything's already set up for it. So when we usually propose these synthetic turf fields, you know, the general rule of thumb is a synthetic turf field is roughly equal to about the playability of 3.5 full-size grass fields. That is because grass fields, you have to give them time to rest. They require more maintenance, and you can only have, you know, so much back-to-back use before you really make the field unsafe and it gets too hard and just basically turns into mud and dirt. Which I'm sure you've seen it, you know, any field that you've gone to that, you know, gets a lot of play. So with the synthetic turf field, you actually are able to play on that field, generally the one game, practice, whatever, right after another, without having a major impact to the field. It's not to say that they're not maintenance free. There is some grooming that happens every 6 to 8 weeks or so, just to basically level out the infill from people playing on it. But in general, these are used mainly to try to maximize the amount of playability you can have on your field in an area that's already set up for it, so that you can have your trainer be there, all your teams can be there, and everyone can have the equal opportunity to use the same space to the most effective amount that they can. As part of making your field be the most effective for usability is having a lighting system. So I'll get into kind of some of the details about the site in a minute, but one of the things that happens is, say now, you know, it's at 5 o'clock, it's pretty much dark outside, so you can't play there anymore. By having lights, you now extend the playability another 5 to 6 hours. Most towns have a time you have to turn the lights off, whether it be 9 or 10 o'clock. But now, instead of going from 2 to 4 and only getting one game or one practice on the field and having, you know, one use, now you're able to have, you know, several uses each day, so everybody gets really the same amount of time and ability to play on it. So this is an overall aerial of the site. This is taken from the town's GIS website. The yellow lines shown kind of around the site, around the field, are the approximate locations of the property lines. The dashed line here is the field that we're talking about. So the school, wanted to explore a couple of different options of, which field kind of made the most sense. While there is another grass field on there that could potentially house the size of the field, because this field already has bleachers, it already has a press box, it already has a scoreboard, it's the one that just makes the most sense to use. It's also, one of the nice things, it's the furthest from the street, so it would have basically the least impact of any of the surrounding properties. It's forested on pretty much 4 sides. Forested a little bit further from the field on the opposite side of the baseball field, but the darker green here being the forested area that's on each of the sides. There's an easement for the electrical lines, and then the other side of that is more forested area. So in general, the site is, very well shaded. We don't feel that the lighting system is going to have any real effect on any neighbors at all. One of the other nice parts about this is that everything stormwater-wise sheds to, I believe this is the south, basically away from the baseball field. So right now the field all drains to the woods. Under our proposed design, we're generally matching those watersheds. So I don't feel that we're going to have any impact on storm drainage, lighting, or anything on any of the neighboring properties. So I'll switch over to the rendered site plan. So this is, generally what we think the field's going to end up looking like. We're still talking specifics about colors and, which lines are actually going to go on the field. What we're basically doing here is trying to match the disturbed area or the developed area that's currently happening. So the field is generally the same size. All of the colors here is all synthetic turf. The border around it is just another color. That kind of helped to delineate where the limit of the field is. So if a kid is running fast towards the end of the field, they do have a visual indication that they have come to the end of the field.
So if I could just interrupt, so the red is still turf, just colored differently?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Around the outside of the red, there will be a proposed fence. The reason of the fence is mainly just for protection of the field and to just kind of keep people off of it. You don't want to potentially have somebody drive a car around the field, and that would be a multi-million-dollar issue. So we do try to just protect the field as much as we can with fencing. We do have several gates around it, both for access for vehicular access and pedestrian access. The vehicular one being mostly for ambulances. And Scott did make a great comment that it looked like the turn of where we had it was a little bit too close, so we actually moved that as part of the revised plans, is move the gate over to make access a little bit better. Couple other improvements, we're improving the electrical so that we can have the lighting system. There is water capability. It's mainly to be able to have maintenance. Somebody throws up on the field, you can plug in a quick coupler and wash it off. If you need to clean the bleachers, you can put in a quick coupler, wash off the bleachers, and we find that helps with maintenance. It's not potable water. They will maintain whatever potable water system they currently use. Then as far as a couple other improvements that aren't currently there is the bleachers don't currently have an accessible route. Accessible route would have to go through a grassed area, which is, while it is a physical possibility, it's not the preferred situation. So the gray area here on the bottom side of the field is proposed pavement. So that pavement is going to allow to have a paved, accessible path to the bleachers. The other nice part about that is it decreases the maintenance that's needed directly abutting to the field. Because if you do have grass and stuff next to the field, you do have the potential to blow grass onto the field, and then actually you can have weeds and stuff that grow in the field. So try to limit the amount of maintenance that's required around it at all. And I'll jump over to the site plan. So talk a little bit about the grading and the drainage. So currently the field grades all about 1.5% or so from the bleachers pitching towards the press box. And basically sheet flows into the forested area to the east. While we're maintaining the same grading pattern, we're decreasing the pitch of the field because synthetic turf fields, you typically have a very small pitch to them. And one of the major differences between grass field and synthetic turf field is grass fields will typically have larger storm events sheet flow, the storm drainage off of the field. What we're actually doing is the water can infiltrate, so it goes directly through the turf, then into the stone base that we're going to be putting in. So as part of the construction process, you have to take out all the topsoil, mainly because the organic material breaks down and you can get, ruts and parts of the field that become unlevel. So by adding in the stone base, we now actually have a large reservoir of area that the stormwater can get into. Scott made a great comment about checking the pre and post flow analysis. So we did that again. And one of the minor changes that we made is we're actually going to be creating a small berm underneath the turf. So it's going to be the subgrade. So you have turf, subgrade, and then when the water's pitching on the subgrade, there'll be a small berm prior to the water getting into the collector pipe. The reason for that is that we're going to allow more water to infiltrate. We did several test pits around the site. I think we did maybe 6. We found that there is a great deal of sandy soils. As we get further to the east, we did get a little bit more ledge, but there is ranging from about a foot, foot and a half on one side to, I think the deepest we went was about 8.5 feet, and we found that it was a very sandy soil. So we do think we're going to get a great deal of infiltration and not have any increases to the stormwater runoff from pre and post conditions. The new field, couple little features is, we're going to have new field goal posts. The ones that are currently there are not the preferred method because the post is basically at the very end of the field, so you can have people run into that more often. We're going to be replacing that with, I think there's a 6-foot gooseneck. Basically gets that obstruction off the field. We're looking at a couple other options for ball safety netting. One of those being a 40-foot wide, 30-foot tall net behind the field goal posts. That'll do kind of 2 things. One, hopefully stop field goals, unless you have a good kicker, which maybe you have. And then hopefully stop a good amount of soccer balls, just because you don't want kids chasing them into the woods quite as much or down the easement. But in general, the field's same size, just switching the grass to turf with some upgrades to utilities. One of the other things I think I left the lighting plan. So this is a scroll up of the lighting plan that was submitted. So the poles themselves vary in height from 70 to 80 feet. The reason that they're that height is so that you can adequately light the field going down without creating glare for people's eyes. The system that's going in is a new version. It's a LED system. What happens with the LEDs is they're very focused about where the light is put versus metal highlight systems, which are older ones from 5 to 20 some odd years ago, that basically you drive by and all you see is a big light coming at you. These ones are specific to the area. They only light up the space and a little bit of area around it. Shown here in blue is basically where the light levels become 0. This also doesn't take into account vegetation, so if this was a big open field, this is where it would be 0. But because there's vegetation on the eastern and southern sides, this point will actually probably be closer to the field over here. This is the approximate location of the property line, the black line outlined here. And you can see that we have no light spillage onto any of the other properties. This is the paved parking lot, and you can see we do have some amount of spillover into the parking lot here. So that's going to allow people from the bleachers to exit the game into an area where the parking lot is lit. so we can get them basically safely off the field. A couple other interesting features about the lights, and if you have any other kind of specific questions, I'm sure Alan can answer those, but it's a 30-foot candle system, so basically the field has an average of 30-foot candles over it, which is the adequate lighting standard for new fields. The LED systems do have actually 3 modes. There's game mode, basically half-size practice mode, and then call it like emergency access kind of mode, or low mode, so high, medium, and low. There's a significant cost savings when you go from the high game side down to the medium side. So when you're having practices and stuff, you don't have to have it at the full game mode. But one of the other really nice features about that is you can pre-program it on your phone. You can call directly and have it happen instantaneously. You can do it through an app on your phone. Justin and whoever needs to have it can have that, so you don't have to have somebody wait and like physically turn the lights off. So if somebody forgets, whatever, it's pre-programmed, or you can set it on and off manually from an app on your phone. So one of the other nice things is when the game's over and you're at the full foot candles, and you want to tell somebody like, all right, time to go, you put the low mode on, and there's a visual decrease in the light levels. People know it's time to go, but they still have adequate lighting to get out to the parking lot. So for the most part, no impacts to the neighbors. We're only lighting up our property, and I think the only other thing that I wanted to mention, on the comment response letter that I submitted, I put in that we changed the type of pavement. That didn't get carried through to the plans that were submitted to you, but we're obviously going to meet the New Hampshire mixed designs instead of the Connecticut mixed designs, which is a small typo. As Scott said, we are planning to use some local contractors. This is rather specialized work for some of the curb stuff, the synthetic turf, but the overall site things, we wanted to try to promote the community involvement as much as we could. We've been talking to Neville Construction and I believe it's Blue Ribbon Fencing to do some of the heavy earthwork and fence work. And I think that's generally it. We don't currently have the sediment erosion controls shown on the plan, but the way that this kind of happens is the excavation site, which is basically pushing all the topsoil up into a big pile in the middle of the site. So you don't really have a lot of opportunity for sediment erosion controls to be needed, because you start off by cutting the site down 8 inches, and at that point you basically have a berm around the whole site because it's in a hole. From there, the topsoil will be loaded on site and then through the trucks taken off site, basically through the parking lot. We do plan to have a sweeper there if we need it for cleaning up of the pavement. We are planning to put in some silt fence, basically at the end of the pavement, and then kind of on the far side of the field as necessary once we kind of get in there. But I mean, that being said, I don't know if I missed anything, or
No, I think you. Really the questions from the board.
switch back to the rendering plane here and open up for any questions.
So I want to know, do you know about our night sky regulations for lighting in our town? You read that chapter in our regulations?
I have not.
We have a night sky regulation which requires lighting to be shielded so that it does not transmit upwards into the sky and pollute the sky. We're hoping you would look at that regulation and make sure that our new lighting does not create light pollution in the sky.
You can comment on this, but it's my understanding that they're
Want to come up, Alan?
Yeah. So the only
You have
concern
to-
I'd have on that with,
Go identify yourself for the...
sorry, Alan Grady, Musco Lighting. Because as Chris had mentioned, the LED fixture at the top of the pole is directed so far down and cut off so much for our aerial sports such as football, it basically leaves a dark spot above the field. So imagine a punt or a kickoff in football going up. If that light is cut so much down there, they can't see a brown ball in the air. So we've added a couple ball trackers for our aerial sports, which are mounted at about 15 feet, and they do go upwards.
Just, if you could just review the regulations with the planning department
Yep.
and read what the regulation states.
Yes.
Do your best to, I know it's a governmental agency and we really can't tell you what to do, but we would appreciate it if you could observe.
I do know International Dark Skies allows, I believe, 8% uplight. So I'll look at that and then look at yours and see.
I'll let Joanne guide you on that regulation.
Thank you.
Any other board members? Barbara?
I apologize, I think I missed right at the beginning of Mr. Holt's presentation. Are there 4 lights?
There's 4 poles.
4 poles, okay. So these are, because I have this little chart with all these numbers on it that don't
Yep.
mean anything to me. But I saw 4 Fs, so I figured those were my poles. So,
Yep, F1 and 2, I think, are the
70-footers.
70-footers on each side, and F3 and 4 are the ones next to the bleachers.
okay. And so are those inside or outside of the fenced area?
Outside.
And sort of to follow up on the chair's comment about the dark sky issues, because I'm actually familiar with the International Dark Sky. There has been an issue with lights in this town before, because we are not flat. So you can talk about it's on the field, but we all know that you can contain the light, but visually it's not the same. And there are some houses to the south, I think. I just want you to anticipate that even meeting the 8% of International Dark Sky and all the trees, those lights are significantly above, well, where are they in relation to the top of the tree line?
In the kind of southeastern side here, the press box side.
Yeah.
They're about 10, 15 feet above the tops of the trees.
Okay, and the other side?
They're in the practice field area, so
There are no trees there.
there are no trees really around them on that side.
And what's their height relative to the ones on the other side?
So bleacher side are 80-footers.
Yeah,
Press box side are 70-footers, with the trees around it roughly being 50 to 60 feet.
okay, so my point is that these are gonna be 20 to 30 feet above the tree line, which means that they will be quite evident to the people off of Normand, who are in the houses off of Normand. Now,
Norman
it may
Road.
not be an
So
issue.
just so they know, Barbara, Norman Road is not on your map. Norman Road is across the woods, point that way,
Yeah.
and it's way out, like over by the
You're-
window.
I suspect you're gonna get some
Norman Road is
comments
gonna
because,
remain like-
It's a parallel road to Wallace Road.
right, and they're elevated. So you're sort of, and the sandy soils didn't surprise me because many of us have been back there and there's lots of sandy soil back there. So that's a nice thing to have to deal with in construction. So I understand what you're saying about the lights, but I wouldn't be surprised if you get some reaction to it. And I'll leave that to the school district to take into account, but I know here in town, people have put in lights on their property that they thought were fine, and it turns out people complained because it interfered with the dark sky aspect of the view.
Yeah, just for the board's knowledge, for the most part, in terms of, speaking with the athletic director and our Parks and Rec director, more than likely, post 9 p.m., these lights are going to be off. You might have an occasional Friday night type football game or Saturday night football game where it might go a little, it all depends upon the nature of the game. But our plan is not to go beyond 9 o'clock at night, so just.
That was my other question, Scott.
Yep.
Thank you for
Yeah.
answering that.
And I do have some pictures here. We're not gonna be a shoebox style fixture. We're not gonna go, we can't go straight down, but we are angled pretty deeply, 20% or so. So I mean, the glare bombs that, you know, most folks think of when they think of athletic field lighting is
Right.
floodlight on top of a pole. You know, you could see pictures kind of are worth $1,000 there. So I mean, I'm not really concerned that distance. If we were super elevated, if we were on top of a hill, where you could see the fixture because you're below grade, that would be a bigger concern.
Yeah, you're low, you're at the low spot in the
Yeah.
area, so that is to your benefit. But I just sort of, if you're sending memos out to people that things are happening, you might expect to hear from them.
Other board members, David?
Mr. Gross, I'm very happy that the SAU's providing this improvement to the town. And it's a great investment. Investments have to be protected, therefore, if they deteriorate over time. Mr. Hulk mentioned periodic re-leveling of the infield. I do not know what that means, but periodic means. So how are you addressing if your athletic director has the necessary tools and skills to do whatever this periodic re-leveling
Sure.
is?
So what we're referring to is that there are black crumbly materials that you have to brush this field and you have to maintain it. One of the many things that we're blessed with is the tremendous partnership with the town of Goffstown. So our Parks and Rec Director, Rick Wilhelmi, has been on our committee. We have been continually talking about how the field will be maintained. As part of this project, we are given accessory attachments for tractors, whether that be school or town tractors. So we will be able to do that type of maintenance. There are some forms of maintenance that we are thinking about subcontracting with. So there is part of it has to do with sanitizing the field a couple of times a year. So there may be some things that we're going to hire a private contractor to do. We do not have intentions at this point of plowing the field and using it all throughout the year. However, we're planning for, if we ever wanted to, that's with the extra gates for snow removal, etc. But again, if we were to go that route, we would use a contractor who specializes in the plowing of these types of fields, because it's something that you just can't plow. You could rip things up. So again, we've had consultations with vendors who do this type of work. The St. Anselm College has been phenomenal in terms of a resource for us, because they do have turf fields. They've spent hours with us, guiding us through. That's how we learned of you guys, both of you. So in that respect, we are actively planning the maintenance component, and we're thankful that we've got a great partner in Rick in the Parks and Rec Department.
Thank you for explaining that.
And just to expand on one thing, as part of each of the projects, we do provide the groomer and sweeper, and we do provide maintenance training as well as maintenance manuals for all the staff at the end of the project.
Other board members? Bill?
I think my question is probably for Scott. It was mentioned during the presentation, and it's also mentioned on the plan on remove and dispose of topsoil, and in the presentation it said to be taken off, disposed of off-site. Has there been any discussion of that being saved perhaps at Public Works for other areas to be, when things are reclaimed, that topsoil is needed?
Well, as part of the pricing of the project, so.
Well,
No, it's okay. I mean, it's something that we've all discussed, so we've had discussions with John Neville, and so.
I understand.
Those are, how do I put this? Those will be finalized when we come to an agreed upon, price, et cetera, but
Right.
Everybody wants the topsoil.
Well, that's why I had to bring it up.
No,
I had to bring it up.
I get it, and being a layperson to this whole process, I never thought that dirt would be so.
Oh, it is, it is.
Well,
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
why it's
know
called
what you know,
topsoil.
but,
Top price.
But it's the weirdest thing is everybody keeps talking about who's getting the topsoil. I mean, but I appreciate the question.
No, I'm
We
glad.
will- I know,
Just-
yeah.
I
Looking
know.
to grow like plants or something, or?
Yeah, I think Rick has some more fields he wants to build.
Yeah.
That's, you know.
Yeah. Scott, can you talk about parking a little bit? Maybe in the worst-case scenario, we're fortunate enough to be hosting a championship game.
Yeah.
People are coming from far away. How much parking do we have? How much do you anticipate you need? Can we accommodate the worst-case scenario?
Right, so we did talk about that. So as part of this project, we don't have any type of funding to expand bleachers, make them any bigger than they are. Now, down the road, it's a possibility, but funding is kind of prohibitive in that respect. In terms of parking, when we talk about the vast majority of the uses of this turf field, I would, and again, Justin is behind me, but the vast majority of them, we're never going to have a problem. You're talking about field hockey, soccer, lacrosse type games. The biggest driver of a large crowd would be a rivalry football game or a playoff type game. Even semifinals and championship games are played at at different locations. So we have had, and Justin, what, 3,000 people? Is it less than that at Bedford? Bedford, 2,000, and that was, again, probably the biggest. It was I think it was when we had the championship season, and we did have folks that did park at Barnard, and we had to make plans at the school district, so we didn't have enough parking on campus for that once in a 2, 3, 4 year type event, and we did have overflow parking, Parks and Rec. We bus people. We asked people to, carpool and things like that. But the vast majority of our uses, our parking will be adequate. We don't have record-breaking attendance at soccer games, field hockey, or lacrosse, which we did. But it's just our current parking more than accommodates, our rear parking more than accommodates that, much less all the parking up front.
You kind of glossed over the erosion control issues, and I would like to know that you're willing to work with the Public Works Department to assure that whatever erosion control plan you come up with is at least reviewed by Public Works. And if they want to make recommendations, you talked about, well, we're going to put a silt fence here, and a silt fence there. I think we should see something a little more finalized for Scott to look at.
That is a most definitely yes. I should share with you that we are using some federal funds for this particular project. Federal funds require oversight. Because we're using a design-build firm, I have asked the Department of Public Works, and Scott has been, so they are going to be responsible for the oversight of this project, and the school district, through this project budget is going to reimburse engineering and DPW for that oversight. So we want to do the right thing, so absolutely yes, and we're hopeful that it will be Scott or somebody else from the engineering department who will do those spot checks along the way, because we need that as part of our federal oversight. And I can't be more thankful to DPW and Adam for agreeing to do that, because it's saving this project quite a bit of money versus hiring a private civil engineering firm to do it.
Okay, and the other thing was on the stormwater, the pre-runoff and the post-runoff, you're satisfied with the report? I see this
Yes,
was
this
developed
was-
by the Goffstown Public Works Department.
It was what?
This stormwater memo was developed in response to the comments from the Public Works Department.
So, we met a few months ago now, and discussed this, providing a stormwater memo. They did that, I had a few comments and they came back with, the new memo we got is larger than the previous one, so they did all of the, the proper checks and everything, and I feel much better with the new one than the previous one.
So you're satisfied?
Yes.
They changed us from Grafton and railroad stuff was taken from Goffstown.
What's that?
You have the wrong towns listed in the or the wrong study areas of the trees.
Yeah, so the original one highlighted.
If you're from Connecticut, it's all the same.
Yeah.
Somewhere out there.
All right, so those are the only issues I was gonna ask about. I was gonna ask about the forested area ownership. You have it drawn, those are the property lines, those yellow lines that are on there?
Yep.
Okay. I wondered if the school district owned the whole forest or not.
We own part of it, because that was the Monty, that land.
That's part of that land
Yeah,
swap?
yeah, so, and I've personally spoken with the Devrians about the project myself. I think this has, in my opinion, it's the existing footprint, and obviously the lights are the one biggest, the biggest change, and, in drainage, I think we've addressed that, so, but as I said before, all of our intentions are, it's gonna be 9 o'clock done, and the exception might be a football game that goes a little bit beyond 9, I think, Justin, most of those are done by 9:30 latest, so
Okay.
that's when that would occur.
Any other questions for these folks here before I open the public hearing from board members
Just
or staff?
more of a comment, the 9:30 is, whatever, and the lights are important, but you can actually hear the game.
Oh, yeah, and that's the whole thing with noise,
Lots around.
and that's.
I mean, I happen to enjoy it when it's going on, but
Right, and I believe our noise ordinance is from 10 PM to 7 AM, and that's another factor why we need to get people
off
off-site.
the site,
You got
okay.
it, yep.
All right.
I just have a comment. I just want to thank everybody that's been involved in this project. It's a very long time coming, and this is a really important, valuable resource to our town. It's going to really help our athletes. It's such a safety measure, and it's so important. So thank you for everybody.
Okay. So we have people in the gallery tonight, and if you folks could step back to your seats, at this time, what we'll do is we'll open the public comment session of this hearing, and if anyone would like to comment on the application, now's the time to do it.
Carl Foley, 17 Wallace Road. I too am very thankful for them coming in. I'm really looking forward to it. Was wondering if the committee itself gave any consideration to future development for perhaps like a track that would be utilized in that space.
I don't know if I'm allowed to.
We're not, this is not a question and answer session. This is a public comment. You can make a public comment.
I
and
understand.
it's be
That
entered
was my
into the
biggest
record.
draw, was when I saw it, I was hoping to see that, proposed track and field. So I think, I know they use Barnard Park, but I do think it's a little inadequate, using that facility for track and field, personally. And I was just hoping that there was some consideration with regards maybe even turning the field 90 degrees, bumping out the lights, and making room for potential track. That's my only comment.
Okay. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Likewise.
Seen you a couple times lately.
Thank you.
I'm gonna
Thanks,
give
Carl.
this answer if I may.
Well, then
Well,
you're
it's
just
not
gonna
on
have
the
to
record
tell
anyway.
us.
Anyone else would like to speak at the public hearing that's here to speak tonight?
My name's Mark Cousson. I'm at 121 Magnolia Drive. I know some of the folks on the board here, so you're gonna have to bear with me. I never met a Mike I didn't like. Moved to Goffstown from Manchester with my wife in 1990 when we wanted to start a family. We both were raised in Manchester, and while I love the Queen City, it wasn't the place we wanted to start raising young kids. Since then, my 3 sons have all graduated from Goffstown High School. I'm proud to say that my son and his wife are now raising the 3rd generation of Coussons. My granddaughter, which I'm sure sooner than later will be, a lot sooner than I'd like, will be attending Goffstown school system. I retired from the Hillsborough County Department of Corrections after 30 years in 2015. I know all too well what can happen to young adults if their spare time is not spent productively. They quite frankly need a place to go and some constructive activity to occupy their spare time. the grass field used to do this, to do some of these activities, is currently used to its absolute maximum potential. Anybody who goes to a football game, a soccer game, a lacrosse game knows that at the end of a season, there is not much left to that field. And I know that they spend a lot of time repairing small places each season to get it ready for the next one. As I understand it, the artificial turf field can provide a safe space for so many more of our kids growing up than just a regular grass field. I have on several occasions in the 30 years I've been a Goffstown taxpayer voted on projects like this, although not like, I knew it was going to have a tax impact, and I was happy to pay my fair share to improve that. As I understand that this is not going to have a tax impact, so I am clearly, despite the fact that my youngest is 26 and I don't have children in the school system, I am very, very much in favor of this. I think it's the smart thing to do for our kids. I really, really think this is a good thing for Goffstown's youth, and I would encourage you all to support the project. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Scott, what's the answer?
Yeah, we want to know. You can talk to us, you just can't have a dialogue.
No.
Oh, come on.
We have a track.
No. You can tell everybody after me. Well, anybody else for public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Well, can we ask Scott if there's planned for a track?
Do whatever you want.
He gives up, third
I
try.
used to be a track coach, I have to ask Scott.
Well,
Need another donor.
Yeah.
exactly. It was about $1 million to put in a track. Space was an issue. We would have to reconfigure everything.
So the
We
short
would've
answer
lost
is
the-
no.
Yeah, and we
Good,
would have
that's the
lost
answer.
part of the practice
Yeah,
field,
you
so-
lose your other fields.
Yeah, so that was it. And again, if there's anybody who has an extra $2 million, certainly give me a call, 497-4818.
Name it after him.
Yeah.
So, just to respond to Mr. Kusan's comment, we're not here to deny or approve the project. We are just here to make comments to a governmental agency, so that's the process here tonight. Okay, board members have anything else? If not, we say thank you for your presentation.
Well, actually, when do you think you're going to be able to do it? I mean, I think the
We're holding-
public that's listening would like to know.
So we're holding a public hearing on Monday evening at the school board to accept and expend the
At
donors.
the meeting for the money.
Right, which statutorily we need to do. At that same meeting, I'll be asking the school board to give me the authority to execute contracts. And right now, we're in that stage where our attorney has given it to Field Turf, and well, you are both attorneys, so you know that it's a back and forth. It's possible we could break ground in the first week of December.
Oh, so
So-
trying to move forward this year.
We are, and the reason being is twofold. One, one of the contractors, John Neville Excavating, he is able to start that soon. It is advantageous for him as well, and the more work we can do in the winter months is better as we get to the spring. So it's possible, like in speaking with Field Turf and their vice president, that this project, they are slating as to be their first project to be completed in 2023. So we're hoping that this project might be, we have to have it done by mid-August because we have to start playing on it. But if we can get that date July, even better, to give ourselves some wiggle room. So as much work that we can do on the earthwork piece in December, in the winter months, great. And John Neville is amenable to picking away at it over the winter. So that's kind of where we're at. I think I've spoken, that's pretty much it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, back up with the, I don't know if we're still on record, but Chris Hall, Director of Design and Construction for Filter. So yeah, we're going to try to do as much as we can during the winter. There's restrictions on the temperature for when you can put the turf down. Because some of it gets glued together, and if it's not like 50 degrees and rising, the glue doesn't really hold, and we end up with all kinds of warranty issues. But we can take the topsoil off, we can grade the field, we can do the storm drainage, we could do the majority of the curbing, depending on cold weather concrete kind of thing. But in general, try to leave the field at a portion where it's concrete all the way around with stone base until a time when the temperature works out, and then we put the turf down. Our best case scenario would be to try to have some senior night games, but that's not really can't make that promise just yet.
So, we have lots of engineers who support their clients at this meeting. Is it true, you really drove here from Connecticut to attend this meeting?
Yep.
You get the prize for the longest distance.
Don't worry, he's getting paid.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming, everybody. Okay, we have, ready to move on to the zoning amendment public hearing workshop?
It's not a public hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a
Stay away.
public hearing. Yeah. It's just a check.
Gift was news to me. I didn't realize.
So before we move on, we have a guest in the audience, I've been informed by our esteemed recording secretary and alternate member. So if you'd like to step up to the microphone and identify yourself for the record, we'll
Thank you. She wants her mitt. I'm Samantha Holman. I am the chairperson for the Goffstown Public Library Board of Trustees. I wanted to stop in tonight to invite you all to our Once Upon a Pie event on Saturday, November 19th at 6:30 p.m. Collis is getting tired of hearing my speech.
The more pie, the better.
There you go. This is the first year that the trustees and the Goffstown Public Library Foundation will host this event. It's usually hosted by the Friends of the Library. So to put our own little spin on it, this year we came up with a new category called the Chairperson's Challenge. In that the chair of any municipal board or committee can challenge another chair to bake a pie of their choosing. So, Mr. Chair, you have been challenged, and I owe Gail a mitt because she so graciously accepted the challenge on Facebook.
Well, I have a better half that's up to her eyebrows in the library right now.
I know she is.
So I think I'm going to defer to her and say I'm not going to accept the challenge.
Okay.
I couldn't bake a pie if I went to Table Talk and bought it off the counter.
If there is a member of your committee who is willing to accept the challenge,
Any other member is willing to accept the challenge, I'd gladly pass it off to anyone else.
I'm going to pass Gail's mitt down.
I've accepted the challenge. First time this year, the sewer department will be in contest for best pie of the town departments.
You didn't tell us at the commissioners meeting the other night.
Well,
Were you holding out?
I have to win first prize first, then I'll boast.
And I've accepted for the Conservation Commission, so.
And you accepted for the zoning board of adjustment?
I'm accepting for the zoning board.
So there's somebody on our,
So come
I
on,
have
Tim.
to take it then, if you're not gonna do it.
please, Vice
All
Chair,
right,
I would
Madam
appreciate it.
Vice Chair.
Make a pie, for God's sake.
Tim, you're a winner.
Not even if it's a good pie.
Say whatever you want, I'm not doing
To
it.
Kim.
That goes to the chairman. No,
And
no,
it's
Vice Chair.
Vice Chair.
Now I gotta make a
And if you just want to attend and enjoy some pie and the entertainment from our special guest MCs and auctioneers, Saturday, 6:30 p.m., Stark Hall.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry you had to wait so long.
That's okay, it was entertaining.
pie.
Entertaining, yeah. Once you run for
We
the
need
board, then you'd
alternate.
be entertained every
I
other
run the
Thursday.
library board. Have a good night.
Good night.
Hey, good night.
Okay, what's next, Joanne? Our zoning amendments?
Yes, we're just going down the list to check that these are the ones you want and that they're worded correctly, and then we will put the ad in the newspaper. We'll send it off on Monday. I had the first one I have, so numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 all have to do with the CIFZ district and removing the residential. So I wasn't sure if you wanted to do separate articles or just combine it all into one, which I would suggest, because you don't want to have,
One
if you
pass.
separate, you don't want to have
No, I
one
think we have
fail
to do it
and
as one.
So
Because you
that
could
would
have a
be.
yay on one and a nay on the
Yeah.
other, and you'd
Yeah.
have conflicting.
Value, yeah.
So then just disregard the first section and read the second amendment, number 1, which is under alternatively combine all changes.
I agree with that theory. Anybody have any
Okay.
comment on that?
Joanne, well, I agree with the purpose of combining them, but it is difficult
Yeah.
to read.
It is.
And I'm not sure if in the formatting of a ballot, you're able to somehow start separate paragraphs for each issue. If that's possible, please
No.
look
I
into
don't
it.
think they allow you to
You
do
cannot.
that.
No,
But
no.
we did have, on the voter's guide, we were allowed to have an
Right.
explanation.
We can have an
Because we
explanation.
format it.
Yes.
Yes, so,
However, I don't know if they allow the explanation on the ballot. I don't believe that they do.
No.
on the voter's guide, to have separate paragraphs for each
Yes.
issue would be beneficial.
But you're, we'll have to check this, but you're in, ask your town council that paid to answer these questions, but you don't have to have the verbatim change, so you can describe in the warrant article what it's about without all the wording, as long as you have the text available for people to see, so,
And would it also have to be available at the poll?
yeah, I think so.
So I don't have the exact verbatim language, but I did go through each section.
But if you precede all that by explaining, you're eliminating residential in the
Commercial,
in the,
industrial.
whatever the name of the district, including the following changes, then it would be clear what the intent
Okay.
is. Because otherwise, somebody's going to look at this and say, are these all different? Are they? But I think you have introductory wording, it would make it clearer.
The rest is, I can't logically read this and understand it, I'm gonna vote no.
Right, I think that's what happens a lot.
So make clear what the overall intent
Okay.
is.
And then, number
So
2.
before you do that next one, Joanne, Jim, would you recommend that when Joanne defines the wording, since it wants to be advertised on Monday, that she emails the wording to board members so that and we can read the wording in case you want to comment on the wording?
Yeah, that would be useful.
I can do that tomorrow.
I just think it would be good to get input from board members if the wording, I don't know, was something somehow not properly worded for legal reasons. for
If you look at Joanne RSA 675-3, you insert a topical description of the substance of the amendment in the warrant article, so that means you can explain it in the warrant article.
Okay. We typically advertise this, but then also send it to the town attorney. I don't know, I mean, there's hardly anything here to review, so we'll probably have it in time for the hearing. Unless he's on vacation or something.
So now we're on the back page of it?
Yes, so number 2 has to do with eliminating the language or the restrictions for the tattoo parlor. And then I just said, and categorize this use as a personal service business. I'm not listing it under that, it's just like, here's the type of business it is.
Could you also tidy that one up with a lot less language in the center of it?
Sure, I just listed what
That's
the
what it
restrictions
says.
are now.
Okay, but I'm,
But-
into Jim's statement, if we could reduce the verbiage and make it something a little easier to read, it might,
Okay,
If you I'm quoting from the statute, insert the topical description of the substance of the amendment. So when somebody looks at this, they're going to say it's too complicated.
okay.
And so just say, we're eliminating a separate
So you could
treatment
just say,
tattoo
to
parlors
eliminate section 5.4 and its restrictions.
Yeah,
And its
tattoo
restrictions,
parlors.
period.
on tattoo parlors, and
and its restrictions.
Yeah.
And then it would be, and categorize this use as a personal service business. You could put it all into like 2 lines.
Actually, we do not, we're not, are you going to list tattoo parlors any?
No, she's
Then the
not.
last clause is incorrect. We're not categorizing as anything. It's
Okay,
any more than any other businesses.
okay.
We're just eliminating a separate treatment of a tattoo parlor.
Number 3 is, providing testimony to the zoning board. And that, I'm just saying, this is what's being eliminated.
Will it fall out of that if we're just saying that we're eliminating tattoo parlors?
That's what I was afraid of. It might sound like we're eliminating tattoo parlors, and I didn't want people to think that.
She overheard me, okay.
Yeah, well, take out the word eliminate, come up with a better word.
By removing.
Yeah.
Removing section.
Yeah.
Placing restrictions,
Okay.
or something.
What we're removing are the separate restrictions on locations of tattoo parlors.
But not removing tattoo parlors from the town.
Correct.
Yeah.
Could have the opposite effect.
They'll be all over the town before you know it. Who cares? They're chic now.
Okay, so number 3 is removing an entire section, which I'm saying what that section is.
Well, once again, Jim, you don't have to state all the wording within the section, you could just state the section you want to remove.
But then no one would know what you're talking about.
Well, if you can come up with a shorter
Okay.
summary.
Why don't you, we can get rid of what the ZBA does, right? We can say removing entirety of section 553 that currently requires the planning board
To comment on zoning
to,
board of
that
adjustment.
currently provides the planning board may provide a comment. I don't think we need what the ZBA does.
Okay.
The last one.
Do you really think, I think most people look at them and say, does the planning board recommend or not recommend? I don't know that
But
they
do we
really.
look at that on the bottom anymore?
That's the
Yes,
one, that's
yeah,
the one they
yeah.
look at, for
I mean,
sure.
that's why,
That's what they read the title, then they go right to the
It's
bottom line.
not always.
No, but make the description simple. Just rewrite this so it's in layman's terms, so they can
Okay.
say, okay, that's what you're doing.
Okay.
Because these are incomprehensible. We know what they mean, but nobody else is going to.
This last one is
why are we doing
I keep
this?
reading it thinking, what are they talking about? And so I finally, today, I got the copy of the actual ordinance that's included in your papers. And this is the ordinance that they were referring to that was approved by town meeting
In
in
2011.
2011. And they still use it. So that's why Derek wanted to add this, because
But where is he going to add it?
to the, well, there's a whole paragraph on this in the zoning ordinance about violations. There's a whole paragraph, section 15:8, and he wants to add that at the very end. So from what Jim said last week, he mentioned 676:17 small a. I added that on to this warrant article so that that's also included.
Yeah, but normally if you're adding something that says in accordance with an RSA, you're just referencing the RSA, so if the law changes, you don't have to go back and change your ordinance every time. It just goes along
Right.
with the RSA.
This is an ordinance that the selectmen
I get
adopted.
it, but I would have
Or not the selectmen,
expected,
I'm sorry, town meeting adopted.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I would have expected to see that you would be asking to put in accordance with the statute simply by adding it into the authority section. So unfortunately, I didn't look at the statute, so I'm just completely confused about what we're supposed to do with this.
When you said the town adopted this ordinance, did it adopt it as an amendment to the zoning ordinance?
Well, it just says authority is under 31:39 dash
Yeah,
small
but that's
c.
not a zoning
And then it
ordinance.
says adoption and amendment of town codes and ordinances.
But the,
It's a town ordinance.
yeah, but that's not part of the zoning ordinance.
So the zoning ordinance is, if you look at, I don't know if you have it with you, but if
Yeah.
you look at 15.8, there's a whole paragraph on violations.
Yeah,
Jim
which I-
suggested we eliminate that in the last
Yeah, I mean,
one.
what,
I'm looking at the minutes.
If a
that's not a zoning matter, it's an enforcement matter. I just don't understand why it's even there.
Over here.
And if we don't follow this exact procedure in the zoning ordinance, what have we done to ourselves? That's why I thought we'd just take it out. You have the statutory authority, you don't need to say it here.
So I remember in our discussion, the reason I kept bringing it up was, at some point, we voted on it, and well, that's why you added that date. But what did we vote on? What did they vote on March 8th, 2011? And does it matter? Can we still just remove it?
Well, if they, well, we can by vote, sure.
Right.
And if it wasn't adopted as part of the zoning ordinance, then it shouldn't be in the zoning.
Maybe we need to,
This-
the article that we voted on, we need to look at.
This-
Yeah, but we can always unvote it.
I understand, but to answer the question, what is it?
Yeah.
We'd have to really look at
Yes,
the
yes,
article.
good point. You've been on a roll recently.
This is the third time you've complimented him in one meeting.
He-
And you haven't given any
It must be,
business
it
about
must
it.
be the fallout.
What about the
for-
sweater?
for
Yeah,
someone.
it's this vest, he likes the
Is that
vest.
a Devance o'clock vest?
Yes.
And there's no comment about that yet?
Well, it's because he wore it last time too.
Oh, okay.
Same color too.
No,
Oh, no?
no.
I'm sorry, I missed the chance.
Okay.
So, this is like taking way too much time for.
Yeah.
Okay,
for
just
whatever
let me
we-
explain
We're accomplishing
something.
nothing.
This document was adopted by town meeting. What
As a
we're talking
what?
about as a what? As to the town code and ordinance.
Doesn't say what code and ordinance though.
Well, it does, because there's a title on this document that Derek sent me. It's what it says here. It's called Town's Plea by Mail
Yeah.
for
That's-
Local Ordinance.
That's how the ordinances
The
are
ordinance shall be known as,
categorized
yeah.
by the
Kind of a
title.
weird name, but,
That's like Joanne's talking.
so and certain
understand why we need
nuisance
it.
violations.
Yeah.
That's the name of this. This was adopted by town meeting as a town ordinance. The only thing that we're trying to do, or administration is trying to do, is add that sentence that it also includes this ordinance under the violations that we already have in the zoning ordinance.
So does that mean it's
He's
codi-
making reference to it.
So does that mean that document becomes codified in the zoning paperwork if you mention it as a document?
It's a reference to
It
it.
becomes part of the zoning then, at that point.
I still think we should get rid of 15.8.
Well, I sent him an email today and told him what you said. He wasn't here this afternoon, and I haven't heard back from him.
When a owner of a parcel is notified of a violation, wouldn't there be additional paperwork with the notice indicating how the person could respond? And one of the options would be, you can do it by the plea by mail.
I don't know, because I don't take care of that, but I would assume they would
Yeah,
reference this.
Essentially, this is providing a parcel owner an option on how to
Right.
address the violation.
I guess I want to know, what is this trying to solve? Because first of all, I'm wondering whether this is this coming from our new zoning code enforcement person?
I'm not sure, but I think they did have a discussion.
Okay, because 670-617 exists on its own and provides for relief. And so it does not provide for the alternative plea by mail.
I think it's apparent right now that has not been properly researched and not properly explained, and it should be put off until the next zoning cycle, a year from now, and let the zoning department, code enforcement, work on something that's more clear and better suits and meets the spirit and intent, and then we can discuss it a year from now.
I look at this as the
Phil, I'm
intent
sorry.
is to provide an owner of a parcel an option on how to
Right,
respond, and that's purely administrative. It doesn't need to be within the zoning.
Thank you. Phil, you've been patient.
Yeah, my recollection is that we did a recodification of ordinances within the town a while back.
Oh, that's right, because they were a mess.
What's that? And my recollection is that they were adopted. Now, if that's the case, was this part of that? Or is there anything is there anything that they're related to? with the recodification, because, as Jim pointed out, this is enforcement. And when all the ordinances, I thought there was also a provision in there that mentioned something about any other ones that we, I guess, missed in the recodification. And the wording might be, if we missed them, only what exist was in that recodification. So I don't know if that had any effect on it.
When was that done, do you remember?
I don't remember, 6, 7, 8 years ago?
So this is from 2011.
No, it was longer than that.
But at any rate, this isn't ready for prime time.
I don't
think it ought to
remember.
be put off.
Well, to David's point, I think the plea by mail is not part of the 676 planning statutes. So I'm wondering, now, personally, I can't imagine a circumstance that the plea by mail would even, the way things are assessed for zoning violations, I don't understand what you'd be pleading by mail and paying, to begin with.
I think.
This is
Right, because if the violation, because the notice is, if the violation
Thank you.
continues, every day we're assessing a fine.
Well, if that provision, the allowance, is not in statute,
Good
do we
night,
have
Scott.
the authority to, good night,
This is
Scott.
plea by mail.
Do we have the authority to do that?
No, right here, yeah.
Plea by mail can be found under 676:17-B.
Jim has it, yeah.
Yeah, we're looking at
Is that
it.
the last
So
page?
why do we need this?
Why do we need an ordinance? It's just a power we have under the statute.
Joanne's the messenger.
Let's
Don't shoot the
move to,
messenger.
send this out for further work and come back a year from now.
So what you're saying is because there's a state RSA already that mentions that you're allowed to do this, we don't need to put it into our zoning
The
ordinance.
zoning ordinance doesn't give us additional powers. It creates the standards. But the enforcement powers are in the statute. Now, there are some limited exceptions. But once you start listing certain powers, you're sort of excluding others. Some Latin phrase for that. So I'm very uncomfortable with spelling out a specific procedure for enforcement in an ordinance, because the issue is have we thereby limited ourselves from the broad
That's
statutory
part,
powers.
because there obviously are other procedures for enforcement.
That's right.
You're gonna put one in the statute, into the zoning ordinance, and what about the other ones?
Yeah, and
Either put them all or nothing.
I'd say you don't need them. And-
Right.
Yeah,
and
fall
we-
back to the statute.
Yeah, and we've got this 15.8, as it's worded, has this enforcement procedure, but you don't need that, because those are inherent powers of the code enforcement. And we've created like a due process right for people on the other end of the enforcement. They're gonna say, well, you didn't follow your procedure in your ordinance. Why do we want to give them that opportunity?
Okay, what's the board's pleasure? Do a straw poll, starting with Dave.
Take it off the table
Dave?
and research it.
Jim?
I wouldn't do anything this year, and then we can look at this whole section, you know, next year when we have some
Barbara?
time.
I don't think we need to do anything.
Kimberly?
I don't think we need to do anything.
I agree, we don't need to do anything. Phil?
We don't need to do anything.
And Collins?
I'd say pull it.
I'd say it's a unanimous decision. So before we walk away from the zoning amendments, there was something that I wanted to bring up, and I honestly forgot to bring it up at the last meeting. We have been talking about our LED signs in town and brightness and such. Is it too late to get a zoning amendment that has a requirement that the signs reduce their lighting intensity by 50% at dusk and make it a zoning requirement?
Yeah, we're still,
No, we're still in the period.
So I brought it up to Joanne tonight because Patty's trying to notice these on Monday, which gives us very limited amount of
but
time
we
to do
don't,
anything.
we have more time. We don't have to, you know, we have more time to do this, right? We just want to get in, start the process early. I forget look on the municipal association calendar, but I don't think we're running up against our deadlines at all.
No, it's just the way the calendar runs with your Thursday meetings and the holidays and things like that.
Sure, but we can have an additional hearing on just you know, something we want to put in.
Yeah.
You know, the risk is, if you get into the end of the hearing season, you don't time to make changes, so let's get it right, the proposal, and look at it.
Well, I think it's pretty cut and dried.
Yeah, why would we need a
We
big
don't really need
consultation
to,
on it?
No, I agree.
so that if,
So why don't we have Joanne draft something and circulate
I
it?
mean, we can, isn't there
Just
something,
publish it.
is there something already that I've been hearing that there is a requirement that they don't change message other than every 15 seconds? So
That's
we
what
could
the
add the
ordinance says.
intensity requirement to that section
Yeah.
as an additional sentence, a simple sentence added to that section.
I thought it could be added easily under 6.2.1.3, which says internally illuminated panels shall be opaque and only the lettering and logo shall appear to be illuminated. Add another section, you
But
know.
that's opaque, that's not LED.
No, I'm saying, and then add another right after that about the LED.
Well, as long, if the wording is clear that it's meant to reduce the intensity of the LED signs at dusk until dawn, then we would put a prescribed amount in, whether it's whatever the board agrees to is a prescribed amount.
Which section were you referring to?
6.2.1.3.
Is that something that's technically the design they can do?
Of course they did, they just said they could do it with the field lighting.
Yeah, the
New lighting,
LED control, the LED control, you can do it.
So the new
It-
ones would change, but not the
You
old.
have to have the correct technical words for the intensity. How do you describe
Yeah,
intensity?
okay.
You mentioned 1/2 at dusk. Well, 1/2 of what? So
Yeah.
you gotta.
Well, I guess the point is if Joanne gets the gist of it and puts it in and Jim's looking at it, see if he thinks that would be
Get a
the
draft
appropriate
out.
place to do it, it can go out as a notice and
Yeah.
we can
And
see
we
what
could-
the reaction is
in
and
the
we can
meantime-
wordsmith it afterwards.
In the
Or-
meantime, we could consult with
or
somebody
put it-
like Tom Souza who puts those
You
signs
got
in,
the-
he could
That's the
explain
one
to
she's
me
talking
what.
about. That's-
Because there might be
Yeah,
a
prohibitions.
different type, because the
flash.
technology
So
changes
I
all
don't
the
know
time.
which
So there could be a
we're
different
doing it.
technology in the LEDs,
Compared to what-
and intensity on one style
Is this the
LED
one
might be something
has the
completely
time?
It
different
could
on
also
another
just be a
one.
simple reduction in the current to them or something.
Well,
You don't want to put it near the moving
the other thing too
signs because
is,
that's under prohibition.
when you're talking about 50% reduction, what are you taking 50% from?
The present.
Well, then the person could turn
This
the.
is just discussion, I wasn't throwing it out there as a hard number, it was just a discussion item.
No, I
We'll get
understand,
it
but
right.
I'm just,
Right here.
that's the point that I'm trying to make, because if I'm gonna be required to reduce it by 50%, I'll just increase my daytime,
I hear what
reduce it
you're
to
saying.
50%, and it's not gonna,
Let's draft
Give-
something up.
the
That's-
intent.
Here we are, you know, we got a definition,
That was my point. Thank you.
but not a prohibition.
Well, that's good, that's called getting it
It-
right.
Well,
Yeah.
but are not limited to
well,
the following.
I mean, that's what
It's sort of
your point was,
exactly.
you know.
My point is to
Good.
stop being blinded at night when I'm driving down the road.
Well,
Well, if you didn't get up so early, it wouldn't be a problem.
you can put it in what's allowed or what's prohibited, and
Put on
and
your
that's the
shades.
6.4, so let's let Joanne ponder that
I'm
when
down
we come back.
114 at 4:30.
Why don't you want to put it in the prohibitions? That's where the
That's where we
timing
go now.
is.
But wouldn't, it is, I guess it is a prohibition actually when you say that, because you're saying you can't, you need to reduce the glare, or not glare, but intensity from certain hours.
And then we have to define what intensity means,
Right.
what intensity is.
I could call a sign company and talk to them.
Well, as the owner of a business, we definitely want the signs to still be illuminated. I mean, it's
Right,
dark.
right.
That's the whole point of having a sign.
Exactly.
Right.
And, you know, what would the hours be? Would it be 12 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock? I mean,
We're bedroom town, we should go to bed early. Unless you have to catch your pilots.
None of them are compliant with the existing.
So are we still
Including
trying to
the
roll the
school.
sidewalks up
Including, by
at
the way,
9
the
o'clock?
school.
The new one?
Yeah, changes like every 7 seconds.
Yeah. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion, or was there anything under discussion on the zoning amendment business before I accept the motion? Seeing none, there was a motion to adjourn by Jim, seconded by Phil. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, GTV.